Welcome to the breakfast show on Faith FM with Skafy and Lindsay. This is the best place to start your day with positive and uplifting thoughts.
You're listening all across Australia on 87.6, 87.8 or 88, depending on where you are, or you can listen to us through our Faith FM app wherever you are in the world.
And if you are listening live, today is Tuesday, the 24th of March. I'm in the studio here with Lindsay and producer Shells at the desk. Good morning to you, Shells.
Good morning, everybody.
And
Good morning.
Lindsay, okay, let's start with our exchange of gratitudes today, okay? Would you like to get a go first today?
Yeah, okay. So I'm grateful today for my friend Andrea's 55th birthday, which was yesterday. And she is a lady who works at the front office of my university, at Avondale University. And she told me last week, it's going to be my birthday next week. And so I wrote it in my diary and I was like, okay, so what am I going to get her for her birthday?
Yes.
And yesterday, as I was thinking about it after being on radio, I was like, I'm going to get her some flowers. So I went up to the local little florist and got her a bunch of sunflowers. And when I brought it down to her desk at the front entrance of the university, so many people had brought her flowers, pot plants, like bright pink and purple balloons and streamers and cakes and so many things. It was so fun to be a part of just like showering this one lady with love. Like
wow.
she spent so much time sitting and chatting with me as I'm walking past. And so I just wanted to shower her with some love. And she made it her effort yesterday to get 55 hugs and she got there. So
wow.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It's a good reason to show up to work on your birthday, hey?
Yeah, wow. That's amazing. What a great, I bet that her desk was looking like probably the most beautiful desk in Australia.
Certainly.
So many flowers everywhere.
Yeah.
Wow,
so
fantastic.
fun. It was just really fun to be a part of that for somebody else.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about you, producer Shells?
I actually have one this morning prepared.
Woohoo.
I am grateful for a Bible verse in Hebrews 13:8 where it says, Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. In a world that changes moment by moment and you wake up to craziness here, there, and everywhere, I am grateful that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and my rock.
Yes, amen for that. That's definitely something good. Imagine if God would change his mind or how he deals with people like every single day. There's some people that are like that, There's some people that you never know if they're pleased or not because they're changing all the time. But I'm glad that Jesus is not that. Look, I am grateful for a few things. The number one thing that I am grateful for, my wife went to a doctor's appointment yesterday, for her post-cancer surgery, kind of just like a checkup. And she came back home and, she was absolutely fine, but she's, so she got,
awesome.
It's just a checkup. She has been declared cleared, from her cancer as well. So that is amazing. But it's good when you go to the doctor and they come back and say, look, actually, she's in great shape.
So good.
I'm very grateful for that.
That's so good.
And in today's show, what are we going to be talking about? I know that we're going to have a very interesting story today by Dr. David Hesker.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be telling us about a time that his boat almost sank in the middle of the ocean.
Oh, okay.
And have you ever been to that kind of situation before?
Yes, I actually have.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah.
I never have. So I'm really keen to learn more, what happens when you're being hammered by these waves.
Yeah, it's no fun. It's crazy.
And I'm going to talk a little bit about some warnings that farmers associations in Australia are giving. And they are saying that prices are going to hike up pretty substantially as far as food goes. So I'm going to be sharing a story about a time where in the Bible we have the worst farming produce price crisis in history.
Okay.
And maybe that can give us some insights into, how do we navigate our own here in 2026.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now it is the best time of the morning. It is time for our very first quiz question of the day. Please, producer Shells.
Alrighty, this is easy, guys. So you're going to have to literally be about speed.
Okay, Skafy, you ready?
Are you ready? Because it is all about speed.
Yeah, ready?
What was the number of the beast? And for you guys out there,
Boom.
So, boom, Skafy was quicker. For you guys out there, 0491 064 669. What was the number of the beast in Revelation 13? What was the number?
You know why
of
he
the
was
beast?
quicker?
Why?
No, why?
He types it on his computer. I write it on a pad with a pen. He just had to go tap, tap, tap. I had to actually do 6, 6.
What? You're giving away the answer, Lindsay. Okay, so now we have to. So now the question has changed.
Oh, dear.
To what is the third number of the beast? Because Lindsay
Third
already
and a
told
half.
us what's the first two.
I gave
6, 6.
1 and a
What's
half.
the third one? So you have like 1 in 9, 1 in 10 chances to find out what's the right one. If you do know the number to that
Nobody
one,
knows.
0491
Nobody heard that.
064 669. The entire universe heard what you have to say,
Nobody-
Lindsay.
No.
Thank you very much.
I didn't say anything.
0491 064 669. What was the question one more time, producer Shells?
What was the number of the beast in Revelation? Revelation 13.
Okay, we've got some correct answers coming through already. Awesome. All right, well, let's move along rapidly, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
Where are we reading from this morning? Are we still in First Kings?
We're still in First Kings, and yesterday we spoke about Elijah resurrecting the widow's son. And there is a very interesting statement that I promised that we were going to talk about it today, because I think it is very interesting. Because at the very end of that chapter, in verse 24, this lady said something to Elijah. And I want to see with you what you think about it, and we want to chat about that concept here, okay?
Yep.
So can you please read for us? Let's read verse 23 and verse 24, please, Lindsay.
First Kings 17, 23 and 24.
That's right.
Says, and Elijah took the child and brought him down from the upper room into the house and gave him to his mother. And Elijah said, see, your son lives. Then the woman said to Elijah, now by this I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord in your mouth is the truth.
Yeah. Okay. So Elijah says, look, see, your son is alive. He's not, fighting back with her, saying, like, why did you doubt, or why did you blame me for all of that? He says, look, here, you know what? Here's your son. He's alive now. And now then she says, now I know that you are a man of God, and that the word of the Lord is in your mouth is truth. So tell me about that, Lindsay. What do you think? So do you think that for all of these years, or all of this time, these may perhaps months or at least weeks, that Elijah was living together with this widow, receiving her hospitality, and God was blessing them with like supernatural, miraculous provision? Do you think that during that time, she doubted that Elijah was a true prophet of God? Because when they first met, she realized that he was a man of God. She realized that, she had a lot of evidence. She already exclaimed and declared that she believed in him as the man of God. So now, why is she now saying, oh, now I know? Almost like, is she implying that before she didn't really? How do you read that?
Yeah, look, I think the time that has been passing up to this point, she could have had a really good maybe hunch that Elijah was the man of God.
Okay.
Hey, I've never experienced this happening for anybody else, so this seems pretty supernatural. This flour and oil is not running dry. I'm surviving.
Okay.
But I think, if that was all it was for her, if it was just that one experience, just feeding her, filling her belly, making sure she doesn't die, I don't know, sometimes, you'd think that would be enough, but I think it's a real crisis moment where her son, her beloved son, is about to die, that she's like, oh, I don't know, why is this happening? But then it's confirmed that, no, God is working through this guy. Then, like it's extra confirmed for her. Like, I think
Okay.
it's in my mind, it's very similar with the disciples, where they experience the feeding of the 5,000. They've seen Jesus do heaps of miracles, but it's not until later when he does more stuff, when he's raised from the dead, like all this kind of thing, that they're like, yeah, this is God.
Okay, so what you're saying here, that look, it is possible that
She was on the.
she had a hunch.
She was heading like she
thought that
was.
this guy is probably a man of God.
Yeah.
But unless I see greater miracles, I will not be 100% sure. So basically, you're saying, look, we know if someone is from God or not, depending on how big the miracle is. And until someone resurrects someone from the dead, we don't quite know if that person is a true prophet or God or not.
I don't think that's necessarily what I'm saying. I think just in her case, that's just a really interesting.
Isn't it? Because if we're going to make this as a standard.
No, and I'm not saying it is a standard. I'm not saying that she had like a proper understanding of how to test a prophet, but in her personal experience, like probably one repetitive miracle wasn't quite enough for her to get
I think
there.
that's very interesting. I think I like where you're coming from, but I have a different perspective or different angle from that. Okay, different theory. My theory is that she knew very well who Elijah was. You know, she obeyed his word. God, you know, he made a supernatural prophecy that came through. And even when her son was about to die, remember, she says, hey, what do I have to do with you, O man of God? So she already claimed that, hey, you're a man of God. Like, have you come to me to bring my iniquity to remembrance and to put my son to death? She's like recognizing this would be a supernatural thing in and of itself. So I don't think that, in my mind, I don't think that she actually doubted that he was a man of God, or he was a prophet, and then she just needed an extra miracle for this to happen. Because if that's the case, that's the standard. We're all kind of doomed in a way. Because, like, say, oh, you're only going to believe if someone is from God or not if you see them resurrecting someone in front of you. If that's the case, then, well, we're not going to find many people to be people of God, because these kinds of miracles are extremely, extremely rare. And we're talking about like the first time in the human history, recorded history at least, in the Bible, that this has even happened. So my theory is a little bit different. My theory is this. Chels and Lindsay and you listening friend and myself, you know God until you don't.
Okay.
You think you know God until you don't. Let me explain to you what I mean by that.
Please do.
You think you know God. You think, like, you know, you're safe and so on. But then you go through an experience that is really challenging your assumptions about who God is.
Yeah.
That experience what she was in, it was challenging her assumptions. She thought that once God delivered her once, she or her son, or she thought that because she was even hosting a prophet, that nothing bad would befall her or her family. Yeah. That was her assumption.
Yeah, I think especially in that time, people would have like talismans and things like that in order to like ward off evil things happening to them, or ward off evil spirits and stuff like that. And like they would have like little idols and stuff. And so she might have thought, oh, having the man of God living in my home is going to stop anything bad happening to me or my son.
Yeah. And look, we already know that she needed a few things to be corrected. Number one, I think she was dealing with some kind of guilt.
Okay, yeah.
Because doesn't she say, oh, did you come here to
bring my guilt to
remembrance and to kill my son? So she was struggling with guilt that was unresolved.
Sure.
And she thought that because of her guilt, God was punishing her.
Yeah.
So, you know, and sometimes when we go through difficult situations in life, it kind of exposes and lays bare the foundation of our faith. And this is when we realize, you know, when because it's kind of easy to kind of believe in God and everything's kind of sailing relatively smoothly. But then when something really bad happens, then you're starting to really question all that you know. And all these things get exposed. So she has a guilt. She doesn't know if God was for her or against her. She thought that she would be immune from calamities because she was being generous to God's prophet. and she was hosting him, all of these things. And then and then she prayed to God. She prayed here without praying. And I think that this is quite amazing about God. Sometimes we don't even know what we're praying for, and God grants our prayers nonetheless. She, ultimately what she wanted is that she wanted her son to live again.
Yeah.
And she didn't even ask that to Elijah. She didn't know how to. In her mind at the moment, in her grief, she only knew how to say to Elijah, man, like, why did you do this to me? Elijah took that as a plea for help. So he took the boy upstairs, he prayed to God, God raised him back to life, and then he got back down. And then she says, oh, now I know you are the man of God. Look at all the things that she learned in that story. She learned that God has the power over life and death.
Okay.
She learned that God is able to bring someone back to life. Actually, everybody learned that here. I mean, from experience.
Yeah,
Elijah included.
Yeah.
She learned that God was not against her, that God had forgiven her past sins, because, there's no indication that she's not confessing. She probably thought that, her sins were not forgiven, even though they were. They were not a barrier between her and God. What else here? She learned a whole lot of things. She learned that, look, bad things can happen to people when you're not doing anything wrong, that this is their element of the randomness of life.
Yeah.
But she learned that there's no case that is ultimately hopeless, because God has all the power. She learned all of these things, and then she's like, now I know. There's a similar story in the Bible to that, and that's the story of Job. Job was a righteous man. He was like, a man of integrity, and he got caught in the crossfires in the great conflict between Christ and Satan. And basically Satan wanted to show to the entire universe that Job, he was only faithful to God because God gave him everything. You remember that story? Of course you do, right? The book of Job is a famous book in the Bible. And basically God allowed Satan to take everything from Job. He took his family away, all of his possessions, and later on, all of his health, his wife, everything. Job had nothing left except like a thread of life, a very fine thread.
Yeah.
And Job was questioning God, why are you doing this to me? Why are you treating me like this? What have I done? I haven't done anything to deserve this. His friends came up, yes, you did. You surely did. God wouldn't have punished you unless you were a big sinner. And Job says, look, no, you can come. God can come and evaluate my life. I can be my own defense advocate here. I haven't done anything wrong. On the contrary, my entire life I dedicated to God. And look, I will still trust in him even if he kills me. But God, why are you doing this? He didn't know that Satan was behind it.
Yeah.
And finally, when God showed up to Job, and God didn't explain to Job what happened, by the way. He didn't say, oh, Job, look, this was Satan. There was like this, thing. We know this because we're reading the Bible. We have this background privilege. We're seeing what's happening.
Yeah.
Job didn't. Job didn't know. And God didn't tell him either.
No.
God says, hey, Job, look, do you think you know everything? Like, can't you look at the nature and see like my wisdom there? Can't you see that I'm trustworthy? Can't you see that that you don't know some basic facts about how the world operates, and you're wanting to know exactly why I make every single decision in every single case? And then finally, after all of that conversation with Job says, God, I'm so sorry for questioning you. I'll trust in you. And at the end of the book of Job has this amazing declaration. He says, before I knew of God by hearing, now I have seen God.
Wow.
Now I know him by experience. And I think that this ties up with the experience of the widow of Zarephath. Until this point, she only knew God so much. When she went through a real tribulation and God carried her through, she could go back and says, now I really know God. Now I know God in a way that I didn't know before. Now by comparison, I know God whereas before I didn't. I thought I knew God, and she did knew God, but she only knew God to a certain extent, Lindsay. Yeah. We get to know God more when we have experiences with God. I could say that of my own life. I mean, by comparison, I've been a follower of Jesus for, let's see, 14 years now. I can say that after some experiences that I had, like I learned so much more about God that I could say, God, now I know who you are. Before I thought I knew, and then something happened. Then I realized I didn't know as much as I thought. And I have that experience. God carries me through. I see a fresh revelation of grace. And then I can say, now I know. So one of the reasons sometimes that God allows really tricky things to happen with us is God saying, because he's basically saying to us, I actually want to reveal something about me to you that you don't know yet.
Yeah.
So we can grow in our relationship. We can grow in your strength.
Yeah, that's a really cool perspective. Like, we go through some difficult things in life, not because God is like punishing us, but it's an opportunity that we can get to know him in a deeper way.
Yes. That's right.
You can see how his strength comes through for us in those moments.
And when she says, now I know that your words are truth, because you know when Elijah says, look, God will provide for you, she thought that God was only going to provide like the perishable bread. Now she knows that God is going to provide for her with the bread of life.
Yeah.
That God is going to provide for her every need, including the greatest of all needs, which is eternal life. So that's the beauty of that story. That's what I love about that passage.
Yeah, so good.
We are going to move on. We're going to have a song. But before the song, did you know that there is an incredible book called Patriarchs and Prophets? This book builds up from Patriarchs and Prophets. This book that I'm talking to you about today is Prophets and Kings. It builds up from Patriarchs and Prophets. So Patriarchs and Prophets goes all the way through the book of Genesis. Prophets and Kings talks about the stories of Elijah, Elisha, the kings of Israel. This is a complicated portion of the Bible.
Yeah.
And there is no better way to understand, to go through what it meant then, what it means now, spiritual, practical applications when you have someone to take you by the hand and walk you through verse by verse, kind of like what we do here. And I want to offer you a copy of that book if you don't have it yet. Prophets and Kings by Ellen G. White. If you would like to receive a copy of that book, just text me here with hashtag prophets to 0491 064 669. Hashtag prophets to 0491 064 669. It is an incredible book to read. There's an availability of audiobook. So text me here and I'll share with you how to find it.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now it's time for our quiz answer and our second quiz question.
So the answer to our first question, what was the number of the beast? What was that, Lindsay?
I don't know. What was it?
It just might have been six, and then the last one was 6.
I said 6. I didn't even get all the way through the second 6.
So it was 666 from Revelation 13, verse 18.
Yes.
Yeah. There is a lot of
Misunderstanding.
Yeah, no, don't say misunderstanding, but there's a lot of various kind of possible explanations of where that number comes from. And I certainly have seen a lot of them. Well, for example, one of them is that some people think that it's related to the statue of King Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel chapter 3 because it's 6 cubits by 60 cubits in height. So it's and that it represents the pantheon of all of the false gods that there are out there. And that's a monument to that.
Okay.
So some people point to that. Some people point to King Solomon's wealth and riches because at some point at the height of Solomon's riches, he will be receiving 666 talents of gold per year from his foreign allies. So he's talking about it's a men's number in that it's talking about men's splendor, like wealth and military prowess and all these kinds of things. Some people point out that it's a gematria. Gematry. So the kind of science, I guess, or the method of getting people's names and then attributing to each letter a number.
Okay.
So one of the traditional Protestant interpretations is that if you look at the title, one of the titles of the Pope in medieval times, Vicarius Filii Dei, meaning the substitute of the Son of God, the vicar of the Son of God.
Yeah.
If you add those numbers, you also get into 666. as well. So they pointed, hey, you see, it's it's the papacy there, it's the Pope. This is pointing to him. And I once heard a preacher talking about it, and he said, look, just by looking at the title, that somehow a human being could be a substitute of the Son of God. I don't even need any numbers to already tell straight away that this name is blasphemous. In its nature. Why would anybody even use those titles? Actually, since we mentioned that, I just opened that little can of worms here. I just have a little beef with some titles that, and I'm talking about us as religious people sometimes claim to ourselves. For example, I have a beef with people being called reverend. One who is worthy of reverence. I think that only God is really worthy of being revered. I don't know why you still use those titles like in this day and age. I think maybe there had been a time for them. Anyway, just a little bit of that. So, but in general, when you look at 666, even if you take all of these, I think that it's a combination perhaps of all of these. It's a number that is symbolizing the supremacy of man over the Word of God. Ultimately, at a high level, low definition perspective. That's what the 666 stands for. It's confusion in terms of spiritual confusion. It's also impressive from a human perspective, from a wealth and military perspective, and it is sneaky. This is why the Bible says, "Look, calculate it. Like think about it. Try use your brains because it's not going to be an obvious thing." All right, Producer Chelsea.
Our next quiz. All right, so it's a fill in the blank, and it's a simple one again, I think, really. Okay, ready. So, for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be blank. I love this verse. Yes, these guys have it here in the studio, and you guys can get it at home too. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be blank.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that one up.
This verse,
Let's talk about it when we give the answer to this one.
That's probably the best idea.
Yes, because I feel that if we're going to explain this verse right now, we're probably going to give it away again. So what's the number, Shells? For
the number is 0491 064 669.
Okay, 0491 064 669. We're talking about like knowing God until you don't, and then having that experience of, look, I thought I knew God because I'm reading it, and then something happens that's catching me. God, are you there? What's happening here? I'm not understanding. And then God reveals himself to you in some ways, and then you say, oh, wow, God, now I know you. Now I know what your words mean. Now I know you better. Lindsay, have you ever had that experience before?
Look, my experience I'm going to share, it's a bit drawn out, okay? So, like, I've shared previous times where I've had, like, miracles that God has done, like, little adventures he's taken me on, and that's all been great. But then sometimes, like, the life kind of wanders on and you kind of forget about these moments, or they aren't quite as impressive when you're like deep in despair. And so I've mentioned in the past that God led me to Victoria a year before lockdowns began. And while I was down there, I also was subjected to some false prophecy around believing that I would marry one person in particular, and that never happened. And as time wore on, I was, I have lots of faith for this. I was caught up in like the whole, claim it by faith kind of movement or whatever. And
like if you believe in something really, really, really hard, it's gonna happen.
It's gonna happen, right?
Yeah.
And
like that book, The Secret, like, the New Age
I don't know
style.
That one.
You know this one? Like, you have to mentalize, ask the universe, imagine that you're there, visualization. And look, I think that there's
not quite the same, but...
Kind of. It's a cousin. It's a
cousin.
Yeah, it's a first-degree cousin.
Yeah, so I remember, like, years going past of this person not ever coming to sweep me off my feet and whatever, and being like, okay, well, what's going on? If I just wait a little bit longer, like, am I going to just wait a little bit longer until I die alone? Like, or is something going to happen here? And there's a Bible verse that says that, when there's delay, essentially, it's difficult for you, but when the desire comes, it's like a tree of life. And so,
hope deferred
makes the heart sick, but when the desire comes, it's a tree of life. So I would hold on to that. I'm like, my heart is feeling sick right now, but surely one day the desire will come. And, I would hold on to verses like that, and it would just like it was really, really difficult. And sometimes, like, being in lockdown in Melbourne, cold and dreary and grey, and not being able to leave your house, like, it's really bad for your mental health. And so I would even get moments where I remember it was specifically demonic thoughts placed into my mind, not my own thoughts, but very clearly like demonic whispers in my mind, either towards suicide or saying, hey, if this specific thing that you're believing for doesn't happen, then God's not real. And it was very loud in my mind, and it was very hard to like push it aside and ignore it or tell it to go away, right? And so I would have these moments where I was like, you know, just, I guess, confused and wrestling through all of this confusion with God. And it's not like at any particular moment things changed and I'm, you know, still not married and that guy has married somebody else in the meantime, so that's definitely not going to be happening. So but over the years, God has just revealed to me, and there was even moments where I was like, I don't want to be friends with you anymore, God. And then like a week later, something really big and bad would happen in my life. I'm like, God, I need you. Please come back. So like, it's just been like a long trudge for me of being in this wrestle with God and seeing that he is really there, and he gives me comfort even when the things that I'm hoping for in this world don't eventuate. And his love and his faithfulness are there. And that's where I've really seen God the most, is like when the things that I've most desired don't take place, but he is still there and he is still good.
Wow. Amazing. What about you, Shells? Do you have an experience like that you went through and you learned something new about God?
Well, as Lindsay's talking, the funny thing is a similar situation, but for a different thing comes to mind for me. I was very early in my walk with God, and I think, you know, it's funny when you said 14 years, I'm like, oh, I think I'm a similar time frame. We must have come to the Lord at a similar time.
About the same time. There you go.
And in this early, you know, in the early stages, obviously, I'm still learning about the Bible. There's still a lot of things, a lot of verses that I don't understand completely. And I had felt like I had been learning about the promises and claiming the promises and living on God's word, but still early days. And in that, I thought God had promised us a house, and a very specific house. So mine's not a husband, but mine was a house.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I went on this really big journey for probably, I don't know, like it was months at least. Like it was a decent amount of time where, you know, I was having an amazing walk with God, to be honest. Like there was some really amazing parts of that walk, but some very, newbie and incorrect theology aspects to that walk as well. But God was so graceful and loving in that time. And even though the end result was coming to the realization that, you know, I hadn't understood some of the Bible verses that I was reading and I needed to understand them a little bit better, it really just taught me a similar thing to what Lindsay had, that he was still there at the end of all this, and he was more beautiful and loving than ever. And even though we didn't end up with a house.
So let me understand about the house. So you wanted this house, you were eyeing this house. Did you have the money to buy the house?
No, so we were still very much at a point where we did not have the financial means to buy a house.
Okay.
I wasn't believing that God was just going to give us money. Like we would have, like I just believed he was going to open up a path to be able to have one, afford it and pay for it. Like I didn't necessarily know the means of how, but I just believed that he could. And I do believe that he can.
Yeah.
But in that moment, through that journey, I learned more about his promises and how to, one of the biggest things I learned was you can have experiences that heighten your feelings and can seem like they're God, but they're not actually God.
No.
It's just your feelings being affected by, it could be bad things or it could just be your feelings.
Yeah. And even demons play on our emotions and make us think that what we believe is going to happen and like give us all those warm fuzzy feelings. Yeah, it's going to happen.
I was even turning to verses.
That.
Like one time I opened the Bible and was reading, and it was like certain verses were absolutely confirming God is talking to me. But in hindsight, I had to do a lot of reflection as I processed that. And in hindsight, I'm like, well, once I understood one of the very first verses God gave me in that situation, I'm like, well, I can't rely on opening something and thinking, God's speaking to me right now. You've got to be careful. You've got to actually lay it across the truth, what the Bible actually says. And if it doesn't align with what the Bible actually says, then, you know, maybe you're misunderstanding.
Yeah.
And so that was, it was quite grounding to go, hey, I need to not rely on feeling here. I need to rely on truth.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But that's a powerful experience. And look, I can think of some experiences I've had similar in my life as well, where God, like, some assumptions were challenged that I had. I have seen this in the lives of other people. I'm gonna tell a story of when that actually went wrong. Okay, I was it didn't happen with me, but with someone that I was counseling at the time, or was kind of walking with. It was happened many years ago. This young man, I was studying the Bible with him, and he was coming to faith, and he was quite a tall, handsome guy, and he decided that he wanted to pray for a girlfriend, and there was like this girl that he was really interested on, kind of a similar experience to you, Lindsay, except that one day I saw him and I said, hey, so-and-so, how's it going? How's your walk with God? He says, nah, I gave up on my walk with God. And I was like, what? Like, how did that happen? And I remember I actually saw him at Bunnings. I was working at Bunnings at the time. And he said, yeah, look, God let me down. Like, oh, really? Like, tell me more. Like, how did God let you down? Says, look, I was praying for that very specific girl to be my girlfriend. And I was praying to God, and I was praying very hard. And then she didn't want to be my girlfriend. So therefore, God has failed me. And because God has failed me, I want to have, and then nothing to do with him. I'm out of this God
He's not
thing.
a genie in the bottle. He's not going to just grant you your wish just because you wish it.
That's right.
He also knows better than us what is best for us.
Yeah,
Big time.
I was. That's right. I said, hey, no, can't you? I said, look, did you realize that perhaps God has something better for you in the future? Perhaps that was not God's plan. Have you realized that perhaps you were praying and wanting her to be your girlfriend, but she may not want to be your girlfriend, and God is also respecting her freedom of choice.
Yeah.
And look, there's nothing I could say. It was no, God has failed me. This was the one test that I gave him. He didn't fail. So it can also happen the opposite sometimes. But what it does give is that these situations will reveal if we have faith in God or not. If you have faith in God, say, God, I'm not understanding anything, but I will trust in you. If you don't have faith, you say, God, I'm not understanding anything, and therefore I am not going to trust in you anymore. I'm just going to trust in me. And that's where God allows this to happen, so that it exposes to see if your faith is real or not. So, you know what? That boy learned one thing. He learned that his faith was not real.
Yeah. Did he recognize that?
Look, I don't know. This was the last time I saw him. I hope so. But when I read that story of the lady, and I see when she's like, now I know, I echo these words and I say, God, what are the things that I don't know about you yet? I mean, maybe I know philosophically, maybe I know intellectually. I mean, read the whole Bible, multiple times. I don't think there's any story in the Bible that I have not read or understood. But it's different when you live through that experience.
Yeah, and
then
see
these
God in a new
verses, they change. Now you're reading them, you have a relationship with them. Like they're talking to the depths of your heart. You understand what's happening.
Yeah.
That is the kind of experience that I long for with God. God, help me to understand your word, not just intellectually, but help me to live, help me to taste it. That is a prayer that we can make to become more like him. We pray, God, help me to understand your word experientially now.
Yeah.
Not just intellectually. And there is a gap between the two.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
Now, Skafy, do we have a giveaway?
We do have a giveaway today. We have a book. We have a lot of people claiming it already. So I am actually very excited for that. It's a book called Prophets and the Kings. It's a book that goes through the Bible. It will in the beginning of each chapter, it will say this. Oh, this chapter of the book is based on these chapters of the Bible. And it kind of traces that. It goes in parallel with the Bible. And as you read through, it retells the Bible story. It explains the Bible story. It explains the difficult things to understand. And then it brings that up into our day-to-day and like how are these truths applicable to our lives. It's
how is this relevant?
Fantastic book. I'm actually reading it right now at the moment.
Oh, okay.
I'm listening to it because I'm an audiobook kind of a person.
Yeah.
And it's just so powerful. Every day I was just like, yes, God, you're so good.
Yeah.
So if you'd like to have that same experience, you can text me here with #prophets to 0491 064 669, and we will organize this book to be sent to you. 0491 064 669. Lindsay.
Yes.
Let's get into the answer to the quiz question. So, Shells, that's your department there, my friend.
Yeah, Lindsay, what's that? No.
Like, why am I the keeper of the answers this morning, huh?
That was okay. I would have nearly given that word away if Skafy hadn't have caught me starting to talk about it when I gave it. Okay, so fill in the blank was for everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved from Romans 10:13. And I was going to say that verse is really amazing. I read something that Ellen White had written to do with this verse. And
Ellen White is the same author of that book that we were talking about, right, Patrick? Okay, why did she write about that one?
She was writing a letter, actually, to a person who had been struggling with feelings of struggling of if you're saved or not.
Okay.
And stuff. And she basically wrote, if in all the Bible there is one verse you can claim and hang yourself on and put your hope in, it was this verse.
Oh, really? That's amazing.
Because
What a great
everyone
insight.
who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved.
I know that she personally really struggled early on in her life with her own sense of personal salvation because she kind of came from a background of like a works sort of mentality, and it took her a long time personally to figure out that, you know, I'm actually saved and like I don't have to keep worrying every 2 seconds if I'm unsaved. Yeah. So that's
beautiful.
such an important verse for us to be able to claim, especially in those moments when Satan or the, you know, demons are whispering in our ear, hey, you know, you're not saved. Jesus doesn't love you. You're not good enough. You've done too many bad things in your life, or you've just messed up really bad this time. You can never come back from this. Hey, listening friend, if you have ever felt like that, please let us know. But there is hope for you. You can claim these promises in the Bible, and it's the best way to fight back against these lies of the enemy is to claim scripture, and this particular scripture.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.